Morning. Oh. Chat is invisible. Great. No more. How is y'all? How are y'all doing today? I can't skip it. I wish I could. The 3 teams I talked about all had heartbreaking losses last week, but we can't hide from the truth. Standard Monday. Good. Epic Pikachu is tired. It's unfortunate for you. I'm trying to remember where what is from. The song? Past week did treat me well. PJ was sick pretty much all of last week, which is not really that big of a deal, but it does mean we have to stay home with him. And that sickness kind of transferred over to my wife and recently to me. But we are resilient. Cactus, how many more interviews do you have to pump out? I thought you were just going to make like one giant video that just had like 5-minute talking points from each person. No, you got like hour-long chunks. Oh, no more? That was long. Okay. It's like, dang. What's up, Lynn? Congrats on your victory in my tournament on Friday. What a year you've had, Lynn, where I literally had no idea who you were when I was talking about the Low Tide City preview, and now you're winning Proving Grounds. Don't let it go to your head. See, Cactus, that's the issue. Sometimes you get that person who just talks forever. And you're just like, Thanks. Great. Okay. I gotta go. Bye. Which is great. I've had Doughboy on here who did a lengthy segment. Jim from Squid School was great. K-Bot, you stay on time is the thing. Like, I tried to make these at least a 30-ish minute segment. I can get a solid 30 minutes out of you without it being like, all right, wrap it up, dude. Like, I want to raid someone and go eat food or something. You're not egregious. Although, if and when Gus starts his podcast series backs up and he has you on it, I would assume when there is no time limit. I mean, Gus just let me talk. And I was like, all right. More than happy to talk. You don't follow Gus Splatoon? You should. Everyone here should. He does YouTube content, but also has a like a one-on-one interview style podcast series. Oh, Cactus's thing. Cactus was interviewing people about the Nintendo guidelines. He was interviewing TOs specifically about Nintendo guidelines. I guess like their thoughts on it. It's already too late. He's already done. By the way, this is from Shovel Knight. I'm surprised I knew that. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Popcast. Whenever you're listening to this, whether it be live or a VOD, Twitch or YouTube, or Spotify, while you are sharing to the world that you are pooped, trying to remember what your New Year's resolution was, getting paid $70 million a year for 10 years to play professional baseball. Whatever it is that you're doing right now, appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to this. Unless I don't. Hey, I've always been the person, or at least I think I've been the person. Sometimes I think I say stuff on this show, but maybe I actually haven't. But I like to think that I preach the message of do what you love, regardless of if there's money involved in it. If you can do what you love and also make a lot of money at the same time, that's great. And I say that because we're in a Splatoon community where ain't a single one of us making money, unless you're like a top level team. And even then, you're just making enough money to where you can buy snacks at the local convenience store for that week or whatever. I will say this, though. If you are a teenager listening to this, here's my old man advice to you. Put down your controller, pick up a baseball. Because my goodness, $70 million a year? $70 million? There are, if you thought I was a wholesome person who would not sell out, I absolutely would. If you gave me $70 million a year, I would open a portal to hell in my living room and let Satan use it basically however he saw fit. Give me $70 million a year, I'll just go downstairs in the morning, I'll just step right over that portal to hell, let me get my coffee, I'll be on my way right down to the bank. Like, that is my advice to you guys. Pick up a baseball. Start getting don't even have to touch grass. Start working on those sliders. They'll get you some places there. No episode last week. PJ was sick, which is pretty normal for babies, especially babies that go to daycare. They just kind of pass around germs like it's their birthright to some extent, and which is fine. It's not like oh, he's in the hospital or anything. But when he's got like a fever and a snotty nose, he can't go to daycare, which means one of us has to stay home. So my wife and I took turns last week being the person who took off from work to babysit a snot-nosed little kid, which eventually got us both sick. So I am a little bit snotty right now, which is why we're having Brush come on so that Brush can talk in place of me, and I can just sit here and nod my head, and you guys can like, comment, and subscribe and all that stuff. So that works out for everyone there. Since I did do an episode last week, one thing that I did miss was talking about the new special, the Splatter Color Screen, and how it has been talked about being banned in several tournaments going forward. I'll just briefly talk about it here. To me, Splatter Color, if it is a health and safety issue with anybody, to me, it's such a no-brainer to just ban it straight up. Just say you can't use it until it gets fixed. To me, I can see arguments against it, but none of the arguments I've seen have made me think, okay, this overrides the health and safety of players that want to play this video game. Like, just banning it straight up just seems like such a simple concept to go across there. And I get the argument of people saying, well, we can't make the game accessible to everybody. And that is correct. There's plenty of people that can't play Splatoon for the past 8 years. My point has been, for the previous 8 years, there has been a select group of people that could play Splatoon, and until a week ago, they had that taken away from them. So that argument doesn't really hold that much water as far as I'm concerned. And I think just the best way is just what IPL stance is, and several other orgs and standalone tournaments have done the same thing. It's just ban it straight up. I will comment on this because I know a couple of tournaments have done this kind of opt-in, opt-out kind of thing, to where if you don't want an opponent to use it, that special, you can just announce as you're registering that you don't want it. You can like hit a box or something, and then it'll just pop up when you play your opponent, like, hey, these guys have requested you don't use splatter screen against them. And I've seen that get a lot of praise from a lot of notable people in the community. I'm hesitant of that approach, not because I think it's coming from a bad place or anything. I think the people who came up with that rule did it with the best intentions. I see a major issue with that rule, though, in that you're basically forcing the players that are affected by splatter screen to raise their hand and admit that they're affected by splatter screen, which, as we've seen from Twitter on last week, and well, since Twitter's been created, that opens them up to all kinds of nonsense from people across the entire internet. And I know it's not like a HIPAA thing where you're saying, I don't want you to screen because it affects me. You're just saying, I don't want you to screen in general, but the only two reasons you would not want somebody to use screen is A, you have a health issue with it, and B, you just want to be like, I just don't want you to use it against me in general, both of which are going to be scrutinized by the wrong kind of people. It will stretch it out to a certain extent. The only way to protect players from having to admit anything is to just ban it straight up and just say nobody can use it. And well, look, guys, we're just talking about one weapon here, foil squeezer. We're just saying you can't use foil squeezer until it gets fixed. But Pop God, isn't it also on the undercover umbrella? Listen to the words I used. I said one weapon. Undercover umbrella is not a weapon. It's a throw. That's right. I said it. What are you guys going to do, huh? I'm 6'8", 270. My DMs are open. Ain't none of you scaring me. News of tournaments that may be of interest to the casual listener of the podcast. It's Low Ink Week. registration is open. It will be closed on Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to do our Low Ink preview on Friday. And I'll tell you this right now, I have no idea what I'm going to talk about. I've looked at teams as they've signed in. I haven't looked over the verification sheets just yet. I'll probably start doing that tomorrow. But as far as like the Low Ink top 10, I don't know who's number 1 or number 10 at this point. I mean, you'll look at the Low Ink ladder and you'll look at the teams that did good in that, but you'll also take it with a grain of salt of like, oh, well, they played a fourth of the amount of players that normally sign up in a Low Ink in a completely different environment. So the top 10 as of where I'm at today is just wide the heck open, which is going to make for an exciting tournament. But I think we'll start getting some favorites kind of locked in as the weeks go, or as the week goes on and we get more teams to sign up. But make sure you guys sign up sooner rather than later. We did approve, I believe, the only exemption request that we have approved all year long. We did that yesterday. So take that for what it is. And we still denied 2 of them, but still exciting times coming around. It's always nice to have Low Ink back. Today, we're going to be talking about the SAC season number 8. I always promised that I was going to talk about it, and I never really talked about it. So now I'm going to dedicate an entire segment, now that the season's over, talking about season 8 specifically, and kind of reminiscing a bit, talking about why I don't think SAC is as strong as it is now as it was back in my day. Let that sit for a minute. I'll take it somewhere. This isn't a oh, my era Splatoon was better. Just wait till we get there. All that and more. But first, it would be one thing if Screen was in the game from the start. Proper warning disclaimers were included. You still bought the game because that's on you. But the fact that they added it, I mean, that's the thing, is that it's just, well, what about flashbangs in Call of Duty? Okay, that's not something that was added 8 years after the game came out. Exactly. I could talk about Screen for a while, but I need other people to talk so that I can just sit here and nod my head. So speaking of which, if you noticed, on December the 1st, Low Ink was not announced, as we usually do. Instead, it was delayed several days before we announced that we are opening up our tournament to registration. It has been anything but fun past couple of weeks trying to get you guys that Low Ink brought to life. And to talk about it today, we are going to be discussing it with a person who I believe rented out a room specifically for this episode to make sure that worked out. So welcome into the Popcast. Former member of the Wiggly Phantoms, commentator, head TO for Low Ink, and genuinely one of my favorite people in the community, Brushstrokes. Brush, how's the morale today?
The morale is good. I just got out of all of my classes. Monday's my hard class day, so I had 3 different 90-minute lectures. But we're done, and we're here in what is a weirdly small boardroom. There's a TV for conference calls with a webcam, and I was tempted to have you guys staring at the whole room, but we're on my laptop instead.
So you're surrounded by a whole bunch of equipment that you just rented or something, or
I rented.
Did you take a room from a graduate assistant? Is that what you did?
I reserved a little baby conference room. It's a table with 4 seats.
All right, fair enough. Just a question not related at all to what we're talking about here. How often, I thought about this the other day when I was commentating. When you're commentating with someone and you are the person you're with is talking, and then they pass the mic to you. How often is the mic passed to you and you just have no idea what the hell you're going to talk about?
It happens every once in a while. I think the last time we commentated together, you and I have talked about this. We hate the term absolutely. I did throw an absolutely at you last time, and it was because I knew what I wanted to say. I had no idea how to get there. So I just said absolutely, and then I made some joke, probably making fun of you. But every once in a while I either like will fully disassociate or just like not have a good point to bring up, and that's always awkward and great, and then it's both of us just like drooling on our mics.
I just want it on the record. I've never once drooled on my mic while commentating. But I will admit though,
Nor have I actually.
especially tournaments that I'm actually TOing at the time. Sometimes when I'll pass the mic to whoever, I'm not watching the game anymore. I'm looking at like a help desk or something, and then they'll stop talking, and I'll be like, "Oh, they almost got a Zuka ready to go. Oh, okay, wow, that's exciting, cool, great. What? Who's winning now?" So I don't know. That was just a thought that popped in my head. I didn't know if
Low is fun, I think. Low is fun because we get to play head TO and commentate at the same time, and I do appreciate that balancing act.
Yes, and I also like the tournaments where I have zero involvement in, so I can just talk about like, oh, this looks like a tricky situation. I'm glad I don't have to deal with it anywhere.
That's real.
So, guidelines come out 2 months ago, a month and a half ago,
Mid to late October.
the day they came out. Your initial reaction?
So I've refreshed myself on everything, not only for this, but for a doc I'm gonna put out on Twitter soon. But basically, um, yeah, the guidelines drop, and I send a message in the channel for all IPL heads. There's like two layers in the structure of the org. It's the leadership team of the entire org, and then all of the head TOs. And I dropped a message in the head TO channel, and I was like, "Hey guys, this is a thing. I don't know if anyone has seen it yet." But my initial reaction is we don't yet know what the repercussions of this are. There are a lot of things that need to be explored and a lot of things that can make someone worried. Um, but and I think a reaction that was shared across the entire tournament organization, tournament organizers across the entire scene, as the TO Guild would then go on to say, is basically like, the number one thing we need to do right now is not panic and not back down, and continue to keep doing what we're doing to the extent that we can. So yeah, the guidelines drop, and my reaction is sort of like, this is a lot to digest. We need to take time to digest it in full, and we can't be hasty.
You I've seen highlights of what this document that you're working on here. You kind of not to spoil anything, but you kind of mentioned the guild to some extent. My thoughts on the guild have kind of like gone back and forth throughout things. I feel like this is like the only scenario where the guild even makes sense to exist, other than just like, hey, when are you guys running your tournament so we don't run low ink over you kind of thing. Uh, what did you think of the guild response? You're not in the guild server, are you?
No, so the way the guild works is every org gets to elect a certain number of representatives of seats on the guild. And so where there's tournament organizer overlap, there is like, for example, I know a lot of IPL heads who are not org heads for IPL who are part of the guild because they're elected through whatever other event they run. But I'm not part of the head TO guild, and it's something I talk about in this doc. Is like, it's a great feeling to just be able to put my hands up and go say, hey, go figure this out. Like, in when it comes to my event, when it comes to low ink, like, I want to be nitty gritty hands on and figure that stuff out. But like, when it comes to something bigger than this, yeah, my reaction is, I'm glad that there are people from my org that I trust. I know that I can trust TOs from other orgs, and it's a really comforting feeling to be able to say, hey, we're going to attack this issue together, we're going to address this together. So yeah, and the same thing sort of with screen here is, once again, it was like one of these things we were debating in the heads channel, but it was nice to be able to go, hey, I know this is something that will be better solved on uh, on a level above just low ink and a level above just IPL, on a level that is the entire competitive scene. So it's a great feeling to know that there's a very quick and easy route to having all of our tournament organizers discuss and debate and come out somewhere.
But that's where I realized this past weekend that the guild is just more of a TO messaging board. It's not like a, like Splat Safety doesn't doesn't call the shots, but they give out their recommendations. We recommend this player be banned for this amount of time, and everybody follows along with it. But the guild is never going to issue a thing like we as a whole are banning screen, because if one TO of one tournament says I don't agree with that, there's no the guild can't do anything about that. I mean, you and me, we answer to Hoenn and whatever god you might believe in. Other than that, we do whatever we want. The guild doesn't tell us what to do. And when you've seen some tournaments haven't banned it, we banned it. Some have done the opt in, opt out. Like that told me that the guild, outside of making statements for community guidelines, is never going to be something that's going to unite all the tournaments under one kind of thing, is what I noticed.
Yeah, and I mean, right. It just like Splat Safety in that way. You're right. It's not like one of these orgs or that the guild is going to. We haven't signed on to say we're going to follow what the guild says
Right.
in a way that even we have as IPL with Splat Safety. But there's no enforcing board, but being able to have these conversations, I think more often than not, history bends to the side of justice or whatever the figure of speech is. And I think the same is true on a small scale here with that when we get our best and brightest TOs together, we're gonna come out somewhere that I think is gonna benefit the community for the whole.
What do you what do you think back of when you think of the November low ink, where we weren't licensed, we knew we weren't going to get licensed that quickly, and we still wanted to do something. We did a ladder low ink that we learned a lot during that, and we also did a high ink that we literally pulled out of our ass and made it work. Thoughts on November?
Yeah, so High Ink was an event that we ran. um
Yeah.
High
Okay.
Ink was like it to me. I remember when JPEG put out he wrote up a Medium post back in like 2021 about what went into the first High Ink and sort of all the trailers he made and dealing with teams and all of this stuff. And we for this one said we have 7 days to throw this thing together. Like, let's just figure it out. And we were in a lucky spot that like Inkfarer, our stream producer, was able to have time that week to throw some assets together. We were lucky that I motion designed for IPL, so we could kind of bypass some of our graphic design pipeline stuff and just get things out the door. Um, but I think starting with High Ink to that question is important because we ran an invitational event, which on paper should be just about as low stakes as an event to run as a TO. Though coordinating with teams has its own challenges. It on paper in a lot of ways should be as easy as an event to go. And I think from a spectator's view, we succeeded. Knowing behind the scenes how frantic things went for that, um, is it helps me reiterate this idea that really is the central of all of this is without a direct line of communication from Nintendo throughout this entire process with the guidelines and now licensing, we have been really flying with next to no advice and next to no idea of where things are heading. And high ink being a solution to a problem that we can't run a full scale low ink right now, was I think pretty ingenious, but it it felt flustered from where I sat.
Flustered, just from the sense that it was just so rushed, or I mean, the tournament went smooth, right? I thought it
Yeah,
did.
I thought so as well. But flustered in the sense that like no longer was the mission statement of High Ink and the brand High Ink was built on No longer was it we're going to build a production master house in the same way that IPL versus, as the same way JPEG loves to do with IPL
Right.
versus and whatever else he's working on. It wasn't about some master or beautiful production and trailers and team hype and montages. All of a sudden, it was about let's get an event played this Sunday because we need to run a live stream this Sunday because that's what we do. We are low ink and we run an event on the second to last weekend of a month. Um, so it was a shift in mission. The event went great, but it didn't feel like high ink as I think high ink necessarily should have been.
So we got through it. I think we learned a lot about ladder tiebreakers,
Yeah.
and also kind of reinforced the mindset that okay, we're never doing this again, until we absolutely get to. Okay, so 200, what 257, 257
Yeah.
teams sign up this week. What are we doing?
We sit down, you, I, and Hoenn Hero, and we look at the message we have pinned in the Low Ink Heads channel of
Oh,
solutions to the 257, and I have the one I'm voting for, and then we fight to the death. I don't care what
okay.
you said. You gave your
Well,
weight class earlier.
well, hold on.
Forget. I don't care
What
that you're going for my head.
what are you voting for? Let put your cards out on the table here. Let the audience
So
know.
I'll start by reiterating what the issue is.
Okay.
With the way Battlefy handles Swiss, uh, depending on how many players you have, it sets how many rounds of Swiss you have. And for the most part, that's a good thing because Swiss as a format only works if enough teams have played each other. Um, but it means that our day one adds 30 minutes, 35 or 40 minutes even every round we add. When we have certain months where we have problematic players or whatever the situation is, a round of Swiss can be 55 minutes. And we obviously aim to not do that, but it happens. So anyway, the solution being how do we keep day one shorter and accommodate more players? My vote is to do a larger bracket on the start of day two. Um, and effectively seed more than just alpha with round robin, but seed alpha and beta with round robin, and that allows us to make bigger groups on day two, squish both of those brackets, and send the same number of players to gamma and epsilon. I don't remember the exact math, but I have it written somewhere.
Well, yeah, it doesn't work. I'll tell you that
It
right.
does. We talked to
how
no. We
how
sat down and it worked.
okay? How often are you and I just bickering at each other in the heads chat that nobody sees
But
except for Owen?
I think that is, if not the secret to a happy marriage, you would know better than I
I
think it's the
would. I am
secret to a
happily
happy
married.
gaming team.
Yes, I'm not married to you. That's but a
But the
happy
point being,
Hetio partnership. How about that?
yeah, I think that's the answer. I think being able to have some clashing means that we get more opinions out there. It means that when we go to our greater low ink team and we say, "Hey, this is an issue we have. These are some solutions we have. What do you guys think?" I think it allows us to be able to become more aligned and say, "Hey, we've already discussed this thing. We hate it. Like, so sorry to the rest of our team, but
Oh,
this is not a solution."
speaking of butting heads, let's talk about the licensing process. And now let
Mhm.
me get ahead of this and say we're not going to spill any IPL secrets or any of the like the main like what our plan going forward is with specific details. However, if anybody were to apply for a license, they're going to find out this on their own eventually. So let's start working through that. Let's start here. You, me, and Hoenn are in a VC, and we're filling out that application like we're doing a group project. And like any group project, I just stood back and let you both do it, and I just chimed in like sometimes.
And towards the last third, I did the same, and all of a sudden it's just Hoenn. But we were both like, yeah, yeah, good, good, I like that. Um, yeah, it was a stressful evening for me. It felt like a lot riding on it because where we stood, it was either where IPL was standing, and I think stands really is without a license, we are breaking guidelines, and that's a scary place to live. Um, Nintendo has given us a route towards licensing. They've given us a route towards playing by their rules, and that will for the most part, from what we honestly know about Nintendo in a situation like this, that's a good thing. We want to be playing by their guidelines. We want them on our side. We don't want to be fighting them. So that evening where we sat down and filled it out, it was us putting on our best lawyer hat impressions and figuring out the best way to word who we are, what is Lowink's mission, um, and like yeah, it was a lot about us trying to say who is the person on the other end of this form reading about Lowink. This is their first introduction to IPL, maybe. Um, how do we make them want to work with us? And it was a pitch that I've never had to make on the low ink front. I mean, we're low ink. We run the largest monthly tournament in the world. Like, I've never had to convince someone to want to work with us.
Yeah. And well, we did our part, and ultimately, we are not licensed as of now, and that is something we've. Whenever somebody asks, we're not going to lie to them. We just straight up tell them.
Right.
So the thing that everyone's found or there is going to find out is basically you have to be a legal entity of some sort, like an LLC or a nonprofit or a not for profit, which are terms that I am aware of. How to go about becoming one of those things is well beyond my scope. Not going to reveal what I do IRL, but it is far from one of those kind of categories there. So here's the frustrating thing. If that's nowhere to be stated anywhere. That there was no like, oh, check this box if you're like a legal entity or an official business or something like that. And B, since we're finding out about that now, nobody in this community is. So if low ink isn't going to become something, at least right now, that is going to be licensed. Okay, Ludi's not, Little Squid League, Minnow Cup, anything with Dapple Productions, Super Jump 20XX, like Sendo, excuse me. None of these are going to get approved. So I guess that just kind of leaves you with the choice of like, okay, well, either everything stops or you just not give a middle finger to Nintendo because you're still like going out of your way to comply, which SAC is now Squid Amateur Circuit. Several people were in help desk being like, well, what does this mean with this statement about all this paragraph, which we just didn't format correctly? It basically says we can stream you on our stream. Just type in anything to agree with it. But like that's the crazy thing that we've kind of been put into with this.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things that like we're IPL is lucky that we're not totally blind. We have people we trust from the Smash side of things. And when the guild sat down, this was published that like Aaron was in our VC. Aaron runs a bunch of the tourney locator and lands that he has been very passionate about tacking Splatoon onto. That's why we have Splatoon at so many of the Kalahari lands. Point being, like we have contacts, we have people we're speaking to, and this is something that completely blindsided us that we weren't expecting. Um, and so we sat down and we said, like, we can't not run low ink. We can't kill the momentum and kill what is the most successful Splatoon tournament in the world by a lot of metrics. Um, and we have reason to believe right now, fingers crossed, knock on wood, that like we're not gonna get fought. Like again, we're following every single thing in the guidelines that we can, other than player caps.
Yeah.
Um, we have reason like from a business standpoint. Hopefully, that's a thing that Nintendo wants to be supporting. Um, but it's a scary place to live. But the messaging from the TO Guild, the messaging from us, and what I think I feel deep down, I'm sure you as well and Hoenn, is like we're doing what we can and we're not concerned. We're going to take things day at a time. If we end up with something in our emails or in Ho and Hero's mailbox, like we'll figure it out and we'll take it one day at a time. But for now, we're going to run low ink. We're going to keep accelerating what competitive Splatoon is, continue to grow this scene. Um, and at the point where, we figured out the lawyer who's going to help IPL and get us there, we'll get there.
And
um,
it's,
Obviously our goal is in the long run to be licensed.
I mean, yes, that is our goal. And I feel like that is Nintendo's goal as well, is for us to be licensed. Like, I feel like we're all on the same page, kind of. I mean, it's like wrestling information out of people at times. But I also get the sense that shutting down events is not what Nintendo's priority is. I don't think they're like Darth Vader going out and just eliminating all the Jedi that they can find. I think it's more so, okay, how can we get you to be where we would like you to be at? And again, the alternatives are this: restrict low ink again, which I refuse to do. I told you I was not going to be a part of that. Like, I sat there and I opened registration and I saw it fill up in 3 minutes. If you weren't on your computer at 1 o'clock, you were not going to play in that tournament. And on the flip side, I don't even know what our restricted tournament would have been, because we can't do ladder again. Maybe we could do like a 64 team old school low ink, or like blocks or different things. Like it's just something I couldn't sign off on. And also, we know that if we don't do it this month, we're gonna, or if we restrict it this month, well, we're gonna have to restrict it for like 5-6 more months at minimum, maybe longer. So yeah, just I know I don't see it as a tricky situation with what we came up with. I feel like it's fair. I feel like we've approached all of this in good faith. Um, we don't make any money, and we've shown that, and we're not about that. The only, like you mentioned, the only crime we're committing is that we're too popular. Which story of my life, you know what I'm saying? But I mean, like, that's
Yeah, mine too.
everything else we've gone out of our way to make sure. And again, if low ink doesn't run this month and we say, all right, we just gotta back down, everything else has to follow suit, or everyone else has to make that decision. As of now, I think I got this number right. I've counted 5 tournaments that have already run, that were announced after guidelines in. 5 tournaments that have broken a guideline that, to my knowledge, haven't been reached out to. And that doesn't mean, oh, well, you got away with it, that means I'm going to do it too and get away. It's just more so, I don't think that's what their goal is, to try to just stomp the life out of everything, which
Right.
at this point they technically could.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you say it's not a tricky situation. It's not, in terms of like, what do we want low ink to be? What is our mission as IPL? Like, if you're a business major, it's very obvious what we do, to ensure longevity and ensure that we're making the best tournament we can. Um, I had a thought and it's escaping me now, but like, yeah, we're seeing other events run. Oh, this is what it was. Like, Low Ink is a weird event because we watch top level to top and mid and high level and whatever other subcategories you like to make fun of Popgun. We watch them to decide what our rules are, what our map pools are. Our mission as Low Ink, and we talk about this all the time, Popgun, is to, prepare low level players for past low level. What do these players do the day they're banned? They need to be ready. They need to know how to handle themselves in help desk. They need to know how to use Battlefy. It's why, until the rest of the scene moves to a new platform, Low Ink will stay on Battlefy, because we prepare players for past Low Ink. So putting that to the side, the other weird thing about Low Ink is that, despite the fact that we're watching the greater community, we are a low level event. We are the biggest event. Um, and so what we have is this weird push and pull of like, how do we follow top level? How do we prepare people for top level? But at the same time, we know that any decision we make will have rippling effects upwards. And if we make a change, not only will our players have different mindsets when they reach top level, but top level will see us do something and they will also react and also do something as a response. So we sit in our head TO tower and we have to make calls that will have ripples throughout the scene, such as running without a license.
How did top level respond to you putting Splat Zone's Wahoo in the map pool while I was out on paternity leave? Did you see that? Did you see that pop up anywhere?
I did see non-Loic players clowning on the map pool after it was on stream. But that was about it. I survived.
So that there you go, viral marketing. There's no such thing as bad publicity. I liked what you were
There you
going
go.
with right there.
No,
Oh,
I didn't get any more followers from it. So I clearly am not doing something right.
why? Let me ask you this question: why did you want to become a head TO for Low Ink?
Did I want to become a head TO for Loic?
We
I
offered you the
wanted to be
job.
a
You said yes.
I wanted to be a TO. We'll start there. I entered after being on the Wiggly Phantoms. Uh, I wanted to have a larger foot in the production side of the thing of competitive Splatoon. I worked on the. I've talked about this a ton of times before, but um, I think I talked about it when I hosted the podcast. But I worked on
Mm-hmm.
Tassel. We worked on Tassel All Stars. Tassel season 3 was it? Fell through. But I met Inky. Inky got me involved with IPL as an animator. Worked with the Moo when she was with IPL, designing a bunch of stuff. And back then, IPL was small enough. I mean, it was right when IPL had formed past Low Inc. So every meeting was everyone. It was always all hands. And it meant that I'd be sitting there as like the only low level player in those calls because everyone was Low Inc banned. That's why they were TOs for Low Inc. And I'd be like, actually, as a Low Inc player, like, here's my opinion. And eventually, that was heard enough that when Splatoon 3 came out and I was like, I don't want to play anymore, I don't have the time for it, I reached out to you and I said, hey, I'd love to get my foot in the door on the organizing side. And y'all had already known me, met me. I'd already been to, had I already been? I just had been at Shine. So I met Miss Popgun and I met a bunch of other TOs. And that was my way in. Um, and from there, I really enjoyed TOing, and the low ink TO calls day of, especially at the time, were busy and loud and hectic, and it was one of those environments that I like to be in. I'm getting a degree in theater design and technology, planning to go into like live music and stuff, and like those environments are hectic as hell. That's what I live on. So when JPEG announced that he was kind of stepping back, and the discussion was like, well, it's who's going to replace JPEG. Um, I think I think I was the first person that y'all asked, and on that call with JPEG, you weren't there for this. I don't know if I've told anyone this. I was like, I told JPEG no, basically. I was like, this is a lot of work. Like, I don't really know what I'm getting myself into. Like, the 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 steps and the pathway to sort of having to deal with bigger IPL issues is not something I want to be a part of, and I know this is a gateway there. Um, but JPEG was basically like, "Shut up, take the job, it'll be fine. I'll hang around for a bit." Um, and so I said okay, and I was like, I'm moving soon. I don't know what my life's gonna be like, but I've been able to make it work for the last couple months. So yeah,
I did not know that. No, JPEG
yeah,
didn't say
I
any
said
of
no,
that.
basically.
JPEG said,
Nope.
"Too bad, you're doing it anyways," and you're just like, "All right,
Basically, he's
okay,
well, because
well."
I was like, who is it going to be then? And he was like, Popgun and I really have to talk then. And I was like, okay, heard. I'll give it my best shot for a
Uh
month.
huh. So it was fear. It was, oh, if I don't do it, somebody else is gonna do it, and they're gonna be worse than what I do.
Yeah,
That
why am
is,
I a head TO? Because I don't trust anyone else.
yes, that is a dangerous path to go down. Eventually, you will end up like me and end up like Kbot. So that is
No.
that is the future you got, buddy. look,
Good.
look out below. Um, Genesis, Low Tide City. Any thoughts going to there?
So I found out after I moved to Boston for school that one of my now closer friends here lives in Round Rock, Texas. Her prom was at LTC last year while we were there. We were like 20 feet apart at one point. Um, so I have a place to live in Texas. So LTC is like almost definitely. Um, and Genesis, I really want to get out to. I can't imagine. Are you and Miss Pop gonna head into Genesis?
There's no way we can get in an
Yeah. Okay.
airplane with
So,
PJ. That's
so what I was gonna say is
yeah.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine an event without any low ink representation. So that's on my to-do list. But the hope is to get there on some kind of uh, uh um ticket with either TOing or production.
I don't know. I think I saw one of the Thimbo IHOP players going to. We got look, we got connections. All right, we don't need Loic staff at all of these events. We've grown our own army that we can send upon the masses.
This is true.
Hashtag play Loic. So okay, so at Low Tide City, I'll bring my portable chess set.
Oh, yeah.
10-minute no increment.
Yeah, I'm a 10-minute, but also like if we're gonna be there in person, it's more fun to be playing 3 minute, like 1 second.
No, it's not.
And just throwing
No,
the
it's
pieces
not.
around is so much more fun.
It is
You're
not
so
fun.
old. Did you know that?
Okay, can we real briefly before I let you go? When we do a lot of the TOing stuff, the vast majority of what I do is pen and paper. Not because I'm a technological fool, but that's just what I like. I like pen and paper stuff. And you get so annoyed with me with everything that I do. You're like, well, you just put it in Excel, you copy and paste, and then it's just way faster. And then you do that, and then you screw something up, and then I get to always be like, sometimes the old ways are best. When you wrote your podcast episode, you wrote your podcast episode, what, you did it on like computer and all that stuff, right?
I did it in Google Docs, yeah.
There you go. Handwritten. Works every single time.
It was a rough podcast. But hey, after September, that top 32 seating spreadsheet works amazing. It's so good. You really just copy paste team names around and everything is seated for you.
Just
it's
give
awesome.
it a few times. Just give it a few times. It's gonna work out perfectly. Trust me. All right, whatever. Yeah. Your generation didn't get to play Ocarina of Time and experience it for what it was. You're already lost.
This is true.
So.
I apologize.
Brush, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I'm sure we'll have you on again in the future. Just go ahead and like pencil in that room for other stuff in the future there. And
yeah, I like it. It echoes a little bit, but it's good.
Finals week already done with finals. What's the
2 down. Most of my finals are like projects or like design prelims. And so the only thing I have left is I have to like design an entire set for a show. And we're like 80% there. So we're in good shape.
Fair enough. All right. I'll probably talk to you every day this week as we get closer to things.
Absolutely.
And, so I'll see you around, buddy.
Hey, can you have everyone follow me on Twitter, actually?
And like, that is Brush. That was Brushstrokes making his first appearance as a guest here on the Popcast. As previously hosted an episode while I was on paternity leave as well. Let's recap the week. SOS number 130 took place on Wednesday. It was won by XOXO. Mwah. Snowcat taking second place, and Orca Balestra rounds out your top three. No clue who the other two teams were that finished first and second. Orca Balestra is an actual team that I know. That just seems to be the case with SOS these days. Okay. Hugs and kisses to you as well, I guess. Hammerhead was won by Dr. Topper. Mako Bracket won by Super Team 5. And Lantern Bracket was won by Hilda Season 3. I missed Season 1 through 2. Proving Grounds number 26, won by Thin Air last Friday. That is made up of Pincer, Lynn, One Shot, and Jeff. The Dark Brotherhood took second place, and a team named Go, it finished in third. I gotta say, obviously Lynn's in chat and has been here exclusively for me to talk about how awesome their blaster is, but I can't get past the fact that Jeff's sploosh might be the best sploosh on planet Earth right now. The things I saw that player do against the Dark Brotherhood, specifically on splat zones at Ramen, literally had me laughing out of my chair. Somebody claimed that they went 34 KA in that game. I don't know if that's true or not. It didn't seem like the game lasted that long to get 34, but I mean, they were just literally Michael Jackson moonwalking over everybody and just getting quads over and over with vanilla sploosh. It was the most entertaining thing I've seen in an individual game, I think, this year. My goodness. Jeff is insane. As is everybody else that was on that Thin Air team. They were fun to watch, considering they lost their first game of the entire tournament and then just went on a loser's run and dominated everyone from there on out. Minnow Cup Clan Blitz Edition was played on Saturday. It was won by Alliance Moon. Ink Black took second place in overtime, rounds out your top three, with Calamity Forged Neo winning the silver bracket. 53 teams played in this 27th edition of Minnow Cup. How are the results of this Minnow Cup tournament going to translate into this upcoming Low Ink? I honestly don't know. We've had teams win Minnow Cup and Low Ink in a 7 or an 8 day time span. Is Alliance Moon going to do that? I need to look at some of the other teams that played in this one and are going to be playing in Low Ink before I can make that determination. Regardless, though, Alliance Move has shown some significant improvement over the course of the past couple of months. We'll see what they do. I think they were a top 8 ladder Inc. team, or made the top 8 out of that one. Ludi is starting to wrap up for several teams. In Division number 4, Torrent wins with a 5-3 win over the Democratic Republic. In Div 3, Sea Bunny Plush got a 5-3 win over Eggshells. Div 1, Mango Hack Mac got a 5-3 win over ASC Tenchi. In Div 10A, Splatastrophe got a 5-3 win over Hurricane. And in Div 11, South Park got a 5-4 win over What the Scallop. Can you believe it? The team that named themselves after South Park characters won Div 11 because there's no other div that we can put them in, and it just so happens they win that div anyways. Hum. Reminds me of TMNT a couple of seasons back. I believe every single division is done. Even like the A and the B divs in those 96 team divs, like 8 through 10. The only one that's left is Div X. The 4 teams in the playoffs for Div X are Jackpot, Heritage, Please Forfeit, and Red Sun. And bless the heart for those 3 teams. I don't think they can hold a candle to Jackpot. No offense. Not many people can. I haven't seen anything confirming this yet, but I know last year they played all of Div X playoffs in one day. Just streamed those 3 matches back-to-back in one giant stream. That was on the Ludi channel. I don't know if that's going to be done again, but I've seen some things hinting that might be something that takes place at some point. So keep your eyes open for that. Div X has to be played eventually. Not that it has always been played in the past. The NFL, the Rams are somehow still in the hunt after losing to the Ravens 31-37. The Steelers embarrassed themselves with an 18-21 loss to the Pats. The Chiefs lose again 17-20 to the Buffalo Bills. If you don't want the refs to throw a flag, don't give them a reason to throw a flag. And that was your weekly recap. Sponsored by Modern Medicine. I think we take for granted the fact that we grow up in an era where we got a lot of really good medicine for a lot of really annoying sicknesses out there. And when you have a sick baby and sick adults caring for that sick baby, you are taking all kinds of different safe modern medicines. Something I found out, my son is never going to have chicken pox back in my day, everyone just got chicken pox. Now they've already found a way to get a vaccination for it, so they doesn't even get that. Mind blown. Modern Medicine, the official sponsor of today's segment of the Weekly Recap. Hey, Modern Medicine sponsored me. Maybe we shouldn't have medicine sponsor us, actually. That might be some sort of issue with that, I'm sure. On Saturday, the 8th season of SAC came to a close, with the final reckoning being the team that stands alone the mountaintop after a 12-team finals. Made it look pretty easy, quite honestly. This is the 8th season of SAC. Well, technically 9 if you're one of those old heads like me who can remember back to the very first season of SAC. That was season number 0. Which makes no sense to me, but Sindow seems to be doing the same exact thing. If you're wondering when season 0 started, don't worry, because in my Destiny Troops logbook, where I have every single tournament we played in logged, you can see clear as day that it was on January the 19th, 2019. We lost the Splat Force in this one. We beat some team called Holy Crow. You guys remember Tsunami? They played in this tournament. Sons of Anaki, they played in this tournament. They both beat our ass silly. We'd get them now, though, if we had a little bit of a rematch. But that's 9 seasons since SAC's been going on here. It's remarkable to think that this tournament series is just as old as Low Ink. And it makes sense that these two things are growing at the same time with each other, because SAC has always been that logical next step after you either win/get banned from Low Ink, as the case with Final Reckoning, where they got banned from Low Ink before they could win it. Well, there's still something else for them to go for. It's not, oh, well, we're just going to disband, shuffle the players around, try again, something else. And I'm sure their roster changed a little bit here and there. Everybody's roster does do that. But having that next step event there, Final Reckoning can just pick up right where they left off, keep grinding, and lo and behold, now they got themselves the tournament win that they were looking for back when they were playing at Low Ink. Why do more people not do that? We're banning teams like we're trying to get teams out of Low Ink. Not that we're trying to, but we've been banning teams pretty consistently over the last year. Yet, for some reason, the registration for SAC has not skyrocketed, quadrupled, and then some in the same way that Low Ink has over the past 5 years. In fact, that first SAC tournament in Season 0 had a whole heck of a lot of teams sign up for it. I can't find the exact information because I don't think it's on start.gg anymore. Season 1 is, but the registration from Season 0 down to Season 8 has been on this sharp, slow decline over the past 5 years, even though Low Ink's registration has been on this crazy, whoa, hey, slow down there, buckaroo, kind of increase over the past 5 years. That doesn't make sense to me. And as I'm sitting here watching the finals on Saturday of Season 8, I can't help but think back to that Season 0 of SAC and how things have just changed so much specifically. And yeah, SAC's changed a little bit over the course of the past 5 years. It's more so a reflection on the community as a whole that has changed that makes things surrounding SAC a little bit different. Allow me to explain. Originally, when the circuit was made, and it made its debut in January of 2019, there was no Plus server. There was no send-out queue. There was no launch point. There was no midpoint, if that's even still a thing anymore. And Ludi was literally 1/5 the size that it is today. Only a meager 170-ish teams played in the Ludi season around the time of 2019. The beginning of 2019 was coming out there. That's just the moderate low ink nowadays. The skill cap was a lot different back then as well. Since there is no plus server to kind of use as a guide for like individual skill level, the skill cap for the first SAC season, first several SAC seasons, was Div 3 of Ludi. And keep in mind, Div back then, all the divs were basically 24 except for Div X and the rare Div X Plus, which isn't a thing anymore. But if that is the case, then that means with low ink always being at Div 5 until it went up to Div 4 for a little bit and then back down to Div 5, that the amount of teams that were banned from low ink by their div alone, yet still eligible for SAC, was only at 48. Now, that again, even back then, not everybody that played in Ludi was in the div. Like there are several teams that were good enough to be banned from low ink that didn't have a div because they didn't play in Ludi. But still, in theory, you only got about 50-ish teams that could separate those two. Whereas today, the difference between Div 5 and Div 3 is about 100 teams in Ludi alone, not including all of the dozens of teams that don't play in Ludi that could fit into that skill kind of gap. This season's finals, of course, had Final Reckoning, who is Div 2. Also had Velocity, who's Div 1. Several Div 4 teams that made the finals of this tournament as well. But both the Final Reckoning and Velocity are teams that are made up of players that play in every single tournament imaginable, whether it is in a time zone that they should be awake or asleep for or not. It doesn't matter. I think you could look at any tournament and see some combination of the Final Reckoning players either in a pickup or themselves. Same thing with Velocity, especially a lot of the members of Velocity. Whereas back in the day of Season 0 of SAC, you probably would see that, but there wasn't a tournament just for them. That SAC came out. It was finally something just for that one group of the players in that Div 3 on down kind of category. There just wasn't a lot for them to do. There wasn't a send-out queue. There wasn't plus servers. There were weeklies, but most of those weeklies aren't around. Paddling Pool is like the only tournament that has survived from that year of 2019. SOS, testing grounds, proving grounds, those all came a couple of years later. So when you only had SAC, you appreciated it more. And you made sure you found time to play in it. Whereas there wasn't really a whole lot of competition, where you see a lot more competition right now. So players had something that they could work towards, progressing through the SAC. In those older seasons, it wasn't just 4 tournaments. They had 8 tournaments, some of those older SAC seasons. They had weekly rankings that they were coming out with that were the top 25 teams that was updated like every other week whenever there was a tournament. It was updated. They put a little screenshot out, that a graphic that they made of the top 25 teams. It was made off of the results of the previous tournament and also a little bit of mix of an eyeball text. So for those of you who watch American college football and you thought, wouldn't it be pretty dumb if the college football playoff committee, if there was an equivalent of that in the Splatoon world? Well, back in the early days of SAC, there was. They basically looked at the teams. Now, obviously, if you won a lot of tournaments, they'd be like, yeah, you're a top 8 team. You should be playing in the finals. But there is some level of, I think this team should be in there over that team. So this is your top 8 teams going in there, which could always leave that team on the 9th spot. Well, how could they go undefeated in their conference and not be invited to the SAC playoffs or whatever? Like, that was a thing back in the day. Luckily, that's been changed to where now if you win a tournament, you are guaranteed a spot. And then based on how many your final standing in other SAC qualifiers, you can win a spot into the finals outright, even though you didn't win a tournament. So things have improved dramatically during that sense, but it was so cool getting those top 25 rankings when SAC put them out. And like, I would always take them, I'd share them in Destiny Troop server, and we'd always be like, how come we're number 18? The team that's number 12, we beat them. But you don't realize, I fell for the trap I criticize you guys for doing now, is not realize, okay, we're judging ourselves against one team and not judging the entire picture as the entire picture. But those kinds of things were fun, right? Like rankings that were based off of not just results, but also what we think this team should be ranked, even if they haven't like living up to the level of what a result said that they should be. Those things were pretty cool. But obviously things have changed a lot. 8 tournaments, by the way. There's only 4 now. How did they get away with running 8 tournaments? Well, one, SAC was a standalone thing. They weren't partnered with IPL. So if they wanted to run an event during Low Inc., there was nothing technically stopping them. Morally, maybe. But I remember once there is a time where Destiny Troops played in an SAC and a Low Inc. in the same exact day. Because you guys remember they had that coast-to-coast tournament where some Saturdays they started at 6 p.m. Eastern time, and then they had the spawning grounds on the opposite bi-weekly that would start at a time that is actually beneficial to Europe at 1 p.m., or I think it was started at like 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The idea with those 2 tournaments that they had, Coast to Coast and the spawning grounds, is that Coast to Coast would be more appealing to Australia and New Zealand, and the spawning grounds would be more appealing to Europe. The problem is that North America would be able to play in all of them, so it was very NA favored, which is eventually why you got settled on this 2 p.m. time slot, which I guess is appealing to somebody. But that's just how that used to be. Let's just run a tournament. I remember it was Nathan that was running those SACs, would literally DM every single team and be like, hey, you haven't signed up for this tournament yet, but you signed up in the last one. Here's a link. Do it. Like Nathan would like cold call people to sign up for that tournament, which is something I would frown upon us TOs doing today. But that's part of the reason why SAC was able to grow. And if you're making a new tournament out of your just like fresh out of nowhere, please don't just DM random teams. Like, please sign up for this tournament. That it's a little cringe, but that's what worked for SAC. I will say that. Oh, and don't even get me started. Do you guys remember the All-Star tournament? Oh, don't even get me started on the All-Star tournament. There is no way you would run an All-Star tournament today. First off, if you're not familiar with the All-Star tournament, they would take select members from every team that played in I think you had to play in like 2 SAC tournaments, and they would take like 1 to 2 players from every team and then they would make the rosters of pickup teams, and that was like their little all-star tournament. They did like a group format. There wasn't anything on the line. I think you could win points one year. Like if your specific all-star team did really well, you would win points for your actual team that counted towards the season. The first season, they literally just put polls up, and it was just a popularity contest who got voted. I think the second time around, they let your team pick 2 players, and Destiny Troops would just, all right, who didn't go last year? All right, you 2 get to go this year. You get to be on the all-star team or whatever. But like taking just 60 players and then balancing that out to, they had like 8 or 10 teams. I can't remember how they did it exactly. But it's impossible to balance those things out. And you would get like this one dominant team that would just steamroll everybody in those tournaments. Like that's why you would never see an all-star tournament today. But it was really cool back then. Nowadays, the modern equivalent of an all-star tournament is if somebody were to just stream a send-out queue or a plus server scrim, because that's essentially what it was. It wasn't a now it's not going to have like the fanfare that an all-star SAC tournament would have, but you see pickup scrims and sets all the time now on a daily basis. It's not as a unique of a concept as it was back in the day when SAC was doing their all-star tournament, and that's probably why you're not going to see it come back, because that has to be the most annoying thing ever to run. If getting teams in an invitational is difficult, imagine putting teams together from a pool of about 60 to 80 players and trying to make it completely fair. They must have got so many complaints with the teams that they had right there. My point being, as I'm going on this long stretch back down memory lane of where SAC was in the past to where it is today, while SAC was all that you had back in the early seasons, it was the only way that you could really step up and make a name for yourself. Nowadays, teams don't need SAC to make a name for themselves. Teams like the Final Reckoning, who ended up winning this one, were known before SAC came around. They didn't have to play in this SAC season for people to figure, oh, that's who that is? That's the Final Reckoning? Like, we knew who they were well before this. I will admit, being on the seating council, that their performance in that first SAC tournament played a major factor in them getting Div 2 over a lower Div. I mean, when you win a tournament against the teams they were beating, that draws some attention to them. That turns their eyebrows. So I'm not saying this is like a total wash, like don't play in SAC or discrediting anything like that. I'm saying there's more outlets for players that are banned from low ink today to get their names out, to grow. I'll pick on Lynn again since Lynn is in chat. Lynn went to LANs and flexed on people in LANs and a bunch of other events. I don't think Lynn specifically, SAC, that's where I think of that player from. No, like there's other ways to get your name out there, whereas before you had no choice but to play in this one. I knew who Velocity was in this. I know who Persistence was, because Persistence has played in almost every single SAC season. As I'm talking about the old days of SAC, Persistence is coming out there with their cane and being like, bro, we were there. We played against you guys. We remember that. Yes, I remember playing Persistence in SAC back in my day. I think they had a rivalry with every single person that's ever played in an SAC because they've just been around for so long. I thought Uwu disbanded. And I look up and they're playing in the finals of this season. I was like, when did you guys come back and even play in a tournament to be eligible for this one? Fair enough. Eggshells, you could probably make the case, made their name through this SAC season. But on the flip side, they're also pushing second place in Div 3 of Ludi. So at the same time, it's like, okay, again, another outlet for them to get their name and brand out. Whereas in the past, you didn't. And if you want an example, a key example of somebody that was able to get their name out in a previous SAC season before there was all this plus server Sindow stuff, in season 1, I'm watching a team called Fourth Dimension play in the finals of what I believe was a spawning ground. I believe it was spawning ground and not coast to coast they're playing in. I've never heard of this team Fourth Dimension before. But there's this player on this team that is drawing the attention of the spec cam and the commentators because they're using a vanilla Nautilus at Schellendorf Institute. And vanilla Nautilus is a low-tier weapon. Nobody's using vanilla Nautilus. I don't even think the Inkjet one was out at this time. But it was just really weird. Why is this player using Nautilus? But oh my goodness, this player is literally embarrassing their opponent in grand finals of this SAC tournament with a weapon we all consume to be a low-tier Nautilus weapon. It turns out that player was named Bagel. And now Bagel is one of the best players on planet Earth. Probably already was at the time. But we didn't know that. Nobody knew that until we saw Bagel in SAC. And then it just clicked like, oh, this is a different kind of cat. And, well, there you go. Now, I'm not saying Bagel would have never climbed to the ranks without an SAC. No. Again, if you're good, people are going to notice you. But There wasn't a plus server for Bagel to grind up through. There wasn't a, hey guys, look, I'm a Leviathan badge in Sindal to grind up through. That SAC season, at least for me, it was when I was like, whoa, that player looks pretty good. And a bunch of other people caught on as well. With the scene as it is right now, which is a good thing the scene has progressed, you're not going to find the next Bagel in SAC because there's just so many different avenues for a player like Bagel to get their brand out and to show everybody how good they are at the video game. So for SAC to continue to grow and get back up to those massive numbers that they're building themselves up for with the format that they got, they're going to have to find a way to evolve again. Because the players are starting to, as much as they complained about the mid-level hell, they're still as active as they've ever been, finding many different things that they can play in. SAC still holds a purpose, but it's not the same purpose that it had several years ago. And it's weird to say several years ago, but that is true as to where it does today. Congratulations to the Final Reckoning, and I already forgot that. I already forgot Sweet Tooth won last season, but they've gone on to improve as much as well. We expect some good things from Final Reckoning going forward, velocity, and apparently persistence yet again. By the way, side note, if there's any team I want to see win an SAC tournament or an SAC season, it would be Persistence, just so they can live up to their team name of being as persistent as possible, playing in pretty much damn near every single SAC season, and then finally they'll win it. Unless they don't. Three of the players are the same players that played for the Final Reckoning back in Lowing. We just got one new member. Fair enough. That's still 25%. But that's not that big of a changeover, which is nice. You like to see that. That's going to do it for today's episode of the Popcast. We are going to do Lowing preview Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time before we pick up PJ from daycare. If you'd like to be a part of the Popcast anyway, feel free to reach out my socials below. Twitter at Mr._Popgun, Discord Popgun hashtag, or just Discord at Popgun. Blue Sky at Popgun as well. If you got a Blue Sky account, you can follow me. If you need a code for Blue Sky, I got like 3. Someone DM'd me at the last episode. I just auto gave it to him. Feel free to DM me on Discord if you want a Blue Sky code. It's as of right now, it's basically just a Splatoon forum without all the bull crap. It's nice to go in there and just have normal conversations about Splatoon and different ideas with other people without people posting cat pictures as a response or whatever, trying to chase clout. Make sure you get vaccinated, stay safe, wear a mask when applicable, and sign up for Lowink if you can. We'll see you guys on Friday.